Good afternoon and welcome to the fifth concurrent session of the day, Integrity in STEM Online Testing. Our presenter today is Dr. Joy Beverly from University of Miami. Dr. Joy Beverly is a mathematics lecturer at the University of Miami. She teaches several undergraduate mathematics courses, including finite mathematics, pre-calculus, and calculus. Her research interests include innovative classroom approaches, student persistence, and integrated curriculum. Dr. Beverly studied mathematics and education, earning her Bachelor's of Science degree from the University of North Alabama and her Master's of Science degree from Troy University. She earned her educational doctorate in higher education with a concentration in educational research and statistics from Florida International University. She has been teaching university mathematics for more than 30 years, beginning with positions at Troy University and the University of Alabama, Birmingham. She moved to Miami to teach at Florida International University before moving to the University of Miami in 2001. Dr. Beverly is a UM Excellence in Teaching Award recipient, the faculty advisor for UPUP, and a member of Iron Arrow. If you have any questions for the presenter during the session, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A session at the bottom of the Zoom room screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. On that note, I will hand it over to our presenter.
Thank you and welcome everyone. I'm glad to see everyone here today. We're here today to talk about integrity in STEM online testing. And I assume that most of you are here because you're interested in this topic. And this became, of course, a big topic for us when the pandemic hit and we had to move all of our classes to online. Since then, we have some hybrid classes. We have some that are fully online, but a lot of our testing has continued to be online. I have colleagues who are in physics and chemistry, and they have similar sort of struggles that we do in the online testing environment. And we've learned a lot along the way over the past year. But I'll often be specifically talking about math because those are the things that I'm facing and that my colleagues are facing. So the first thing we want to talk about is academic integrity in general. So what I recommend is that instructors publish a very strong academic honesty statement. And instead of telling students what you don't want them to do, tell them what you do want them to do. You certainly don't want to list all the ways that they could cheat on their online work. I'm sure they can find those out themselves, but we certainly don't want to give them any ideas. But instead, talk about the things that they must do, meaning it must be their own authentic work that they're going to submit. And what we do generally in our setup at the university is that I have all online classes right now, even though students are in person for many of their classes. It just happens that mine are all online. And the testing is online. So we have many low stakes, homework, little quizzes, things like that we do, extra credit, and of course, class 3 to 4 times a week. But we have 3 to 4 times for classes where they must take exams. And I'll talk about how we've approached that on those higher stakes exams. Academic integrity and the accountability that goes along with it is not just punitive. We're not trying to punish students. We're trying to do this. If we get a false idea of what students can do, for example, because they're submitting exam work or problems that someone else has done, or that an app has done for them, or that they've gotten some sort of help with, then we can't really make decisions regarding remediation, instructional techniques, the pace that we're going at, and spiraling back when we need to. So if all of my students, let's say, for example, answered a domain question, and they answered it perfectly because they used apps and they didn't know how to do it themselves, I might not know that they're struggling with that, and I might need to spiral back and cover something like maybe a quadratic inequality that they were struggling with. So there are pieces that we need to go back on and inform our instructional techniques, our pace, the remediation, and we don't know that if the work we're seeing is not the student's authentic work. Also, we can't really advise students. I remember one time, and this is pre-pandemic, when a student had gotten credit for Calc 1 and 2 without completing the work. I won't go into all the details, but she had. And then she told me that. And then she said, I think I want to become a math minor. And I said, well, you need to really think about that, because you just told me that you didn't do the work for Calc 1 and 2. So you presumably don't know that material. And now you're going to have to go on to Calc 3. And if you can't get help from this other person with that, how are you going to really go on? But if we don't know that, then it looks like they have A's in these classes or they're doing really well. We might advise them to go to something that they really are not ready for. On the other hand, if you look at the student's view, if students are not cheating, but they feel like their classmates are, then they feel like even good students and honest students might say, well, I need to cheat to compete. And we don't want to have that atmosphere. We want students to feel like it is a level playing field where everyone is just submitting their own work and not getting outside help. When students have to work harder, they might collaborate, they really learn, and then they're going to make informed decisions. They're not going to say, well, I have an A in Algebra 1. I think I need to be in honors in Algebra 2. Well, did they really do that work? And is that grade there because of what they did? And I have seen situations where students in some way or another got a grade that they did not earn, and then realize that they really need to go back, and it's difficult to go back. And we can't repeat credit. And so it's difficult for them to go back and be able to, to learn that at that point. All right, so we're going to talk about how instructors can encourage academic integrity when we're in this online testing environment. One is the way that we construct and deliver the exams. It takes a lot of work, but a better constructed exam will give a better result. We'll talk about a little bit about that. The second way is when the exam happens, how are you proctoring? I know that some instructors don't proctor at all. And if that's their decision, I'm not sure what they're getting. I've heard instructors that say, well, if they're not doing their own work, it'll catch up with them down the line. It could, but I feel uncomfortable with a student, say, that it's going into engineering, not doing their own work. There are ramifications when you go forward in that. So we'll talk about both of these things. Let's talk about first how you would construct an exam that might promote integrity. First of all, make sure that you construct original questions. And even as I say that, I know that this takes a lot of time. If I have several sections, every semester, I have brand new sections. Am I constantly rewriting things and trying to come up with a way that they might not have seen before? Takes a lot of time. So do multiple forms. Nothing that I'm saying here is really different from what you would do in a classroom. In a classroom, you might also think about original questions, multiple forms. But if you're online, and I'm going to specifically be talking about the things that I use Zoom for class, and I use Blackboard's Respondus Lockdown Browser with Monitor for testing. And then sometimes I use both. But if I'm using Blackboard, I want to utilize that pool feature so that I don't just give one question that everybody gets the same question, but I'll make a pool of questions. So from student to student, they don't really know what question they're going to get. I do test at a specific time during class so that all the students are coming at one time. If you space it out, obviously they can share ideas and answers, but that's true always. If you're going to use the pool, I wouldn't make 250 calculus questions and ask the computer to pick 10, because who knows what they'll get. Instead, it's very narrow. I mean, so narrow on my objectives that if I had a derivative problem, I might have not just derivative, but a derivative using the chain rule with a trigonometric function. It could even go further than that. But I make it very specific so that I'm picking a pool of questions really narrowed down to what I want to ask. We do require written work. Even if we do some multiple choice, which we do mostly open-ended, we do require the supporting work. Application is always better if you want to write the application with the calculation. And sometimes when we're on online, we will present just one problem at a time and maybe shuffle the order from student to student, so that if they're communicating with each other and trying to share answers with each other, which is just one way to kind of be dishonest in testing, but if they're sharing answers, the number one is not somebody else's number one. I have gone back and forth on prohibiting backtracking. Sometimes I do prohibit backtracking, and then sometimes I don't. Recently, I have not. So I have not prohibited backtracking because I allow them to go back and review their answers. And we've talked a lot about this, but that's one thing that we have to think about. Sometimes requiring a reflective or explanatory sentence. We found that sometimes when we do this, if it looks like a very advanced work, and then the student is required to reflect on it, then sometimes they cannot, and it just shows that it's not their own work. Even in that, it should be a teaching moment to say, why do you feel as if you need to do this? Can I help you more? Can you come in and get some more help? Another thing we try to do, or I try to do, is to provide formulas, or you could even allow open notes if you want. Students in an online testing environment, they can put those formulas where you can't see them. So they could have them. So you might as well give it to them. That's my take on it. We did have one student where a professor did not allow formulas. And this is the picture when she was asked for a picture of her environment. This is what she submitted. So you can see that she had Sharpied the formulas onto the laptop. I mean, we're really familiar with Post-it notes so that the camera doesn't pick it up. But this was a new take for me. So I think, why not just say in the instructions, here's all the formulas, or maybe even more than the number of formulas you'll need. Just use them. Some of my colleagues in chemistry provide the periodic table, some other things, so that students can just look at that if they need to. I don't want to encourage them to have to write them somewhere. All right, so if you're going to give an online test, I do recommend that before the big stakes test to give a practice exam. You could give extra credit or have it very low stakes, but I think it needs to be required because we don't want students to not set something up correctly and then fail on something that's higher stakes. So helping them to perfect their setup, let them know what the upload process is, because we're requiring students in math to look at problems, write on paper, and then upload a PDF. But we have had some cases where other people are writing tests for students. And so if we give a low stakes practice, then we can tell if it's really their handwriting or not later on. When we do this, of course, allow multiple times until they get it right. And I always give a lot of feedback. This is usually like a 5-minute recorded little quiz, which is maybe for extra credit. And I go through it, I really look at it, and then I give students comments. I might say, well, this is not right. I can't see your hands, and we'll talk about that. We always have to see their hands in their workspace as they're working. And I say, try again. Sometimes I just comment, because if they feel like I'm really watching in the initial one, then later on, if I have more than 200 students taking an hour test, I really don't have 200 hours to watch their videos very carefully. So I have to just limit my time. So I want them to believe that I could be looking. And so I really look at those short videos. And then later on, I do glance over everything and then look for problem areas. All right, so the reason we're considering proctoring in math is this. Over the past year, we have watched the way that students tend to not submit their work. One is to hide some way their workspace or their hands. So we require that hands and workspace be visible at all times. Last semester, we didn't realize another way that students would get help, which is not to focus on the exam. We found students were writing the exam and were talking to somebody else in the room, looking to the side and copying, looking to the side and copying. So now we have to say, you also have to focus here from the screen to your paper so that you're focus is always on your paper or the workspace. And it's big for us to see the hands in the workspace. And I know chemistry, my chemistry professor friends have not emphasized that as much, but it's really important to us in math. I think everybody's aware, if you teach math, that all you have to do, if I have a problem on the screen, is to get my phone. And I don't think if you're looking at me, you can see me, but I have my phone now. I lean it up, I take a picture, and within seconds, I not only have the answer to that with an app, I have the steps. All I have to do then is copy the steps. So it's so easy to get that help, not from a person even, but from an app. And so I want to just make sure that we can see your hands, we can see what you're doing, just like we would in a classroom. So sometimes I proctor live in the Zoom classroom. If I do this, I'm looking at them in real time. So I'm watching them in real time. The advantage to this is I do not have 45 or 50 videos to watch later because I'm watching them live. I put them on a gallery mode. I usually use 3 machines, actually, a desktop and 2 laptops. And I look at different sets of students as we're doing this. I present to them the exam all at once so they can see one paper on their screen, just like I would share the slide here. It is sometimes difficult to get it to fit, but try the best we can to get it to fit. I like to keep their hands off the keyboard because whenever you have to enter things into the keyboard, obviously your hands are kind of going out of the frame. When I record, I make sure I use the calorie settings. That's because I've recorded before and been just recording myself and not the students. And so just being recorded, I know we can talk a lot about how some students are nervous about this. I've done some things with students who are very nervous, which has helped. But again, that's my setting, and I'll tell you what I do with that. But yeah, so sometimes people, I understand, might be in a situation where they can't do it. For the ripple effect, I usually correct someone or something. So I might say, Consuelo, I see that you have a watch on. Could you please remove it? Because that's one of our requirements is you have to remove watches because a lot of students have smartwatches. And when other students hear that, just my voice saying that to one person, it just makes them think, okay, I'm being watched. And so just like I would be in a classroom. Here is just sort of a little Zoom setup. And these are not real students. These are some models who did this for me. And you can see some problems with this. We have one student looking at her Apple Watch. We have another student reaching for a prohibited calculator and his face is not showing. We have another student who only her face is showing. We have no idea what she's doing with her phone, with her hands. And then the last student, it's better because I can see his workspace, but I don't know if he's looking around or communicating with somebody else. And so these are kind of problematic as far as a Zoom setup. I'll show you at the end, what would be a nice setup. But the other thing that we could do if we don't want to do Zoom, which I usually don't do, and instead we use Blackboard, Respondus Lockdown Browser with Monitor. So the students practice and then they know that they take their laptop, they go to their space and they begin and go through a process. And there's a video that's preserved. I look back over the video, I look at their test, and then I usually am fine with it later on, or I talk to them about their results. But when you do this, if you're going to use some sort of video service with a lockdown browser, lockdown browser without a video, to me, is nothing. I don't even know why we're locking it down. It would be great if they only had one device in their house, but obviously they have many devices in their house. So locking down the one device they're on doesn't really do anything. I would just take it off if that's all I had. But if they have the lockdown browser and are being filmed, then hopefully that'll make sure that they're, applying all the things, all the guidelines that we've asked for. You can consider no backtracking, presenting one at a time. That's everybody's decision. But on Blackboard, you do have to lock students into the browser. You can consider making it where it's timed, of course. You can consider making it where it will automatically submit when the time is up. But one thing for math that we can't do, I have some of my daughters are in nursing, and in nursing, it's really just them thinking and recalling. They're not writing so much. So in that situation, the respondent really wants their face to be here and their focus to be here. And that's what the School of Nursing uses. And of course, you can imagine nursing is really high stakes. I mean, if nurses don't learn what they're supposed to learn, there are big consequences later on. So they're really, really careful about that. But in math, students look at a problem and then they look down. So their face will be looking to the problem and down constantly. That's just the way that you work in math. And for Blackboard, we have to deselect notifying the students when the face cannot be detected. Because if we do that, it will constantly tell them you're not looking at the screen, but they really shouldn't be looking at the screen. Now, of course, we don't want them looking to the side, but to look to their paper is perfectly fine. So we can just deselect that. And then, of course, repeating over and over again about these tenets, the focus, the hands, and the workspace. If I have that, I'm pretty confident that it is, hopefully the students' work. Even on Blackboard, here is a problematic setup. So this is the feedback that we get with a video. And here's a student, not a real student, but my daughter, who has agreed to do a really bad setup for this. So you can only see her face, and this is an issue. So whenever students do this, we try to correct it. And I usually see this in the practice so that I can correct it. But I don't know what's happening with their hands or her workspace. Here is one thing I've been doing lately, which is a sort of double proctoring, which has worked out pretty well. If you see this student, he is on the computer. So in theory, he is doing his work on the computer. But I'm also, so he's being proctored by Respondus. Respondus is filming him from the front. But he has taken his phone and put it inside a glass, because that's the best tripod to hold your phone, and put it behind him. And I am on Zoom Live with him. Now, this is what I do with some remote students, because I have students who they're all online, but some are remote and some are actually on campus. So there's two different categories. So this is a consideration too, if you'd like to possibly have one or the other. I find that watching them from the side, I can really see the entire workspace and what's going on. I see what's behind his computer. And I also talk to him, and he can talk to me and ask questions and just, ask for help or anything that's going on there. So I do like that live aspect. And this is the way we've been accomplishing this, which is a really nice setup. The change from 2020 to 2021 is this. I do understand this. I'm in a university setting. Everybody is not in a university setting. And I'm in a university setting where not all of the students have completely reliable internet. Not all of the students have what they need to make this happen. It is a requirement. In other words, we have a requirement at the university to take an online class. You must have working internet and so on. It says a lot of things that you have to have, because otherwise maybe you can't take the class. But if students are in town, then one of the things we've done, if they're not a remote student, so they're not in another city, then on test days, this has been a game changer for me. I say it in the syllabus that they are required to take exams in our library. And that has been really, really helpful for me. They can come to class from anywhere. So they can be in their dorm room, they can be outside. We have beautiful weather here, so they're outside a lot. But when they take a test, I ask them to reserve an academic space. If they are anxious, if they're still having trouble, I do have one classroom with only 6 seats where I did today, even bringing students in, and I'm there live with them. We have a lot of the protocols in place, the plexiglass and the spacing and everything, but I do bring them in if they have any sort of trouble and they're here. But when they've gone to the library, the reason this is a big game changer for me is because before we were having students in their dorm rooms trying to take a test. And when they would, They would be in different buildings. So possibly something happened with the internet in one of the buildings. Their roommates would come in and not be quiet. They would not have a big enough testing space to show. So when they began to be required to go to the library, it's just a much nicer space. It's quiet. There are people there, staff there that are going to keep other people quiet. They can reserve study rooms or a big desk, and we have a reserving system. I can also see the reserving system. So if they tell me, oh, I can't find a space, I can look and see. And if not, I might refer them to the music library or a second library. But we do have space. We do have space. And I realize that that's a luxury. Our library also has one Respondus testing room, which has machines that are ready to do Respondus. So I've had this many times, when a student's camera fails on their laptop or something happens, they come into Zoom, because I'm always in Zoom, even when they're in Respondus and it's during class. And they say, I don't know what to do. My laptop is failing. And I say, go to the front desk and ask them if you can use the Respondus room. And they can. And then they go up there, and it's been resolved every time. So there are other machines there that they can use. So having them in this space has been really helpful. And I had a quiz where I told them, you don't have to go to the library for the quiz. Half the class went to the library. And so I said, did you guys not hear me when I said you didn't have to be in the library for the quiz? And they all said, we just want to be here. We like being here better. We realized it's quieter, it's bigger, it's better. The internet is good. And so that was very helpful. So I realize not everybody can do that, but this has been a real changer, a game changer for me. After I get the videos, if I am using Respondus, I cannot watch every second of everyone's work. So instead, I try to look at students where it may be problematic. Maybe they've cheated on some low stakes work. So I'm looking for red flags. I'm looking for red flags in the videos. So I'm not watching the whole thing, but I'm looking more at the thumbnail photos that I see. I'm also looking for them working too fast or too advanced on homework, and then they can't seem to answer questions in class. And between the time when they're on Respondus, and that is a lockdown browser, and they upload the PDF, we require them to do it in 5 minutes. Most of my students do it in less than 2. And they have practiced and they've gotten really good at it. But if they're ever taking, I don't know, they're off camera, taking 15 or 20 minutes to upload, that's going to be an issue. And so if it is an issue and we feel like dishonesty has happened, I usually, we have this in the syllabus where we reserve the right to bring them in for an oral examination. And this is to verify the work they've already submitted. And so when they do verify the work, we're asking them not to do new work, but just tell why you did this or that. And it's been many times where I don't think anything's going on. I just tell them, look, I'll show you the video. And then they say, oh, I didn't know it looked like that. They should have known, but they didn't know. And so we try to make it a teaching moment. I mean, but if it is an act of dishonesty, then we do refer to the Honor Council. But we're trying constantly not to ruin students, because, or I would say maybe they ruin themselves if they do something that's extremely dishonest, but to say, why are you doing this? Do you feel like you can't keep up? How can I help you keep up? I think you can do this if you just, put in the time, if you'll come to office hours, if you'll get into this study group, and try to give them another chance to correct things. So sometimes, and we are required to report to the Honor Council if we see something blatant. But if it's on the edge and I'm not sure, I might try to stop them from hurting themselves by asking them to come into the classroom space, meeting them face to face, seeing how I can help them, just trying to get them to just to do their own work. And I think it works a lot of the time. So, all right. Here's our picture of a student who is not at a really, really big table, but who has a nice setup that we like to see. He's working on his paper right now. You can see where his camera is. And so when he finishes working the problem or he needs another one, he'll look up it often helps not to be in front as far as the exam goes, but to be to the side. That's been a really big help, is to put the laptop to the side so that we can really see that it's just him, his pencil, his paper, his brain, and nobody else and nothing else helping him. And that way, when we get that authentic work, I can know if I need to help Dylan. I can know if Dylan is doing fantastic and I need to ask him to maybe get in a study group with some other students. Maybe I can make him a group leader. Maybe I can recommend that he pursue a math minor. But if I don't have his true authentic work, it's very hard for me to know, just what decision to make. All right, that's all I have for today. So I'm going to stop sharing now. See if we have any questions. I thought we had a few come in.
Yes, we have a couple of questions. Dr. Bowman wanted to know, how do you accommodate for students with multiple time zones? She's had some that had anywhere from 2 to 3 hours time difference to 12 to 14-hour time difference.
Correct. Yeah, we have that too. It was a big problem in last spring because the students were in Miami, signed up for a particular time, and then dispersed. This semester, we actually tell students, our classes are live. Our classes are live and synchronous. Our exams are synchronous. So I have a student in China, and he said, the time is difficult for me. And he said that at the beginning of the semester. And I said, you need to move to another section then, because this is when this class happens. And he knew that before he signed up. Now, if it's something that you can't control and there's only one section, we have given test 2 versions at 2 different times. So maybe that has to happen, but maybe she could elaborate on, if it is live or not. I'm not sure. But we do have that same problem, but we ask them to sign up for a time that works for them. Our university also added some classes that start at 6:45 a.m. It's really not so much to accommodate students that are in Miami, but students that are around the world find that a better time for them.
I also had another question. I had a student that had another screen or screencast going. They were looking up to see the information. How do you account for that if the focus is on hand? I did see that you showed the picture of the laptop coming from the side. Does it help that?
Yeah, I had a student, I had a test today, and I have a student who has 2 desktops and then a separate camera. And I had noticed this in the last test. That's why the setup you saw, I asked him to do that this time. He's remote, so he can't come to campus. So I asked him to put his phone in a glass and on Zoom and back it up so I could see everything he was doing, because it is a lot of screens and that can happen. He's locked down in his test, but there are other screens that could be open. I don't know if that answers it or not, but.
Our next question is from Dr. Hunt. In the double proctoring setup, what if the student says they don't have a second device? I know most do have a second device, but if they say they don't, how would you handle that?
I haven't run into any students that don't have a phone. So the 2 devices are the phone and the laptop. And, I think you'd have to just kind of come, make a decision one-on-one. I can't imagine in my setting where I have had students whose phones have been stolen, aren't working, that kind of thing happens. And again, since I'm on campus, I have the luxury of saying, well, then you'll be one of the ones that get to come in the classroom. I've even had paper tests ready if they're here, and said, okay, nothing's working, so here's a paper test and we'll work this out. But most students, again, the proctoring on Zoom is through the phone, which is set up in the glass beside them. And I talk to them until they get a good setup. And once they are, I say, okay, proceed with your test. I'm good. And I can talk to them through it. Yeah, so I think most of my students do have this, and it's a requirement for the course. If they're here on campus, we have computer labs. And of course, we have the library, which has many machines that they can use. So if they had to borrow something, we also have machines that they can borrow. But again, I realize not everybody has that situation.
We also had another instructor who actually just chatted in that he has students who don't have unlimited data and say that they can't pay to use it, um, at least for a phone as a proctoring device.
Right.
Have you run into that before?
I haven't, but then again, I'd say 90+% of my students are on campus. And so even if they're on their phones, they are using Wi-Fi on their phones. So they're using the university's Wi-Fi, for their phones. So I really haven't, but I can see in many situations where it would be difficult. And, we worry about even our students. I mean, this is a private school, but we have some students who are coming here on a full aid package. And when they go back home, they do not have reliable internet. They have a crowded space. So it's difficult. So it becomes more of an issue when students are off campus. That's the thing, is when they're actually here, we do have alternatives for them. Being in the library, being in our computer labs, meeting with them in a classroom. So we have a lot of nice spaces on campus with good, reliable internet. But yes, I think that can be an issue if they're away. So however they're joining you, I just try to make it work. So something's going to break down. Something is going to break down when I give a test. So we'll have a percentage of the class that's just moving right along. I'm always in Zoom waiting for people to pop in and proctoring others. And it's a little bit of a juggling act, I admit. But, I always have a paper in my hand if somebody needs to come for a paper test. And I always have, if it's on Respondus, which is, pushing the test to them, I also have a PDF of the test in case they just have to come to Zoom and just do it on Zoom on their laptop.
Our next one, we do have an instructor who asks to repeat the statement that you made where you say your instructor reserves the right at their discretion. She just wanted to hear that statement that you provide again.
Let me see if I can share it again. We do put this on the syllabus and we've put it in different forms. But our department is constantly rewriting and crafting this. And even working sometimes with arts and sciences, and sometimes working, even receiving some wording back from general counsel on what we can and cannot say. So we write this, but we will selectively use it. So if we think something is really going on, it's very time consuming to call students in and have them justify their work. Between last semester, we were calling a lot of students in and it was taking so much time. So instead, what we want to do is head off what they might be doing. So in other words, if we only see a student's head and we don't see their hands, we first look at their work to see if it looks too perfect, or does it look like a normal student's work where they're making some mistakes and some things are good? In that case, we started instituting percentages off. So in other words, if you don't follow this, we don't want to call you in. We'll just take off 10%. And then on the next test, we say it's a 0 if you do it again, because we already told you, we already penalized you, because the whole process of honor council and calling them in to justify work is really time consuming. And last semester, I was teaching 5 courses, 17 credit hours, and I had 250 students, and trying to really give them time was super difficult. So some of you probably have more students than that, maybe more sections than that, but it's really difficult to follow up.
Our next question. One problem I have is that many students say that when they tilt their laptop so the camera shows their hands and work area, they cannot see their exam on the screen. Of course, this is only a problem for students who cannot print out the exam. Do you have any suggestions for that?
I have a lot of students who say that, and mostly they're coming from the front, because when they turn it to the side, usually it will work. They have better eyesight than I do, so I might not be able to see it very well from the side, but usually they can. Also, maybe making the font bigger. But then I also, the main thing I've done is show them pictures of people who are doing it right. And it's like a light bulb go, oh, I can do that. Or we tell them, it's almost like this is, you don't even think of this, but putting it up higher on books. So take several books, put it up a little higher, and it's usually solved like that. We also take time in the beginning of the semester during class, and I'll say, okay, we have 10 minutes left. Let's see what your setup is going to be. And nothing's going on, but we say, okay, set it up as if you're taking a test. And I'll say, okay, Julia, move yours to the side a little bit. And everybody's kind of watching Julia until she, and I'm like, oh, Julia has everybody look at Julia. She has the perfect setup now. And then, so we do it in class. And of course, they're not always in the same location. So at least they get an idea of it. So elevating the laptop helps and going to the side helps.
Our next question, what if the university does not recommend video monitoring?
I don't know what to do in that case because my university does allow it and even recommends it. So if they don't recommend video, if they don't recommend recording, I guess I would say do it live in Zoom and just watch and comment in the moment. I can't imagine that you're not allowed to be with them because again, it's like some of my students don't want to come to class and they don't want to be seen. I mean, that's the equivalent of coming to physical class with a bag on your head. I don't know. If you're coming to class, you're coming to class. If you're taking an exam, you're taking an exam just because it's distanced. So sometimes they will say, it's making me nervous to be filmed. In that case, I say, well, if we were together in a regular class, I would be in the room watching you. And so, and then again, of course, I have the classroom so I can offer, would you like to come to the room and just have me watch you take it? And I do have that backup this semester, which has been helpful. I know everybody doesn't have that. And I don't have it for students who are in New York or wherever else they are.
Our next question. I have been to other seminars on this topic where we have been told that these requirements are putting unnecessary stress on our students, which can affect their test taking ability. I think this kind of stress has been measured in psychology experiments. What would you say in response to this?
Yeah, I think all high stakes testing puts a psychological stress on students. It does. So the place that I'm in, most of my students are going on to more difficult math classes. So it is essential that they learn Calc 1 because they do have to go to Calc 2. And, the thing that I can do is hopefully talk with a student, see how I can help them. Even I have in my career had a student, this is face-to-face, come in and work on a board for me because he had a lot of issues. And I said, well, come and work on the board for me, but some way they have to show that they can do the work. So if you can come up with an alternate testing situation, something different that you can do, maybe, but we feel like in mathematics and in STEM in particular, they're just skills that you need to have. Sometimes I say to my students, you're not really good at football if all you do is play an online football game. You're not really that good at it. It seems like you are, but maybe you're not, so to get out there and actually do it is necessary. So yeah, we want to do it.
All right, and we have one last question as we are getting close to our end time. Have you ever been challenged by students if student handwriting is different? Of course, we know that instructors are not handwriting experts, but have you encountered this?
Yeah, we're not handwriting experts. So I would say that if it looks vastly different, just ask the student. I have asked students like, this doesn't really look like your handwriting. And I've had them say, my sister wrote it for me. My tutor wrote it for me. Sometimes they just tell me, yes, it's not my handwriting. Somebody else wrote it for me. So sometimes just to ask them and they'll say that. I think it's probably, you know, maybe not something that would go fully before the honor council, and they'd be, you know, if they deny it, they might not be sanctioned, but it might be worth me asking them to do it live. And this is one thing I do too. At the end of when they're on respondus lockdown, I ask them to take their paper and hold it to the screen just for a moment. And that has helped too. So they're just showing me what their work is. And I think once they get used to it, they seem, you know, they seem like they're okay with it. And I try to have an open forum where if they have a complaint, I'll listen to it. And if it's legitimate, you know, which I think most of the time they're feeling something. I'm here on campus. I'm here. I'm not teaching, you know, face to face in classroom, but I am here. And I'm going to try to do something that will help them take what they know and show it to me somehow. So yeah, as far as the handwriting goes, I do ask them to give me a little screenshot. To be honest with you, I can't really read it, but they think I can. And so maybe they turn in the same one to me later on. I don't know.
All right, well, thank you so much, Dr. Beverly, for sharing this valuable information with us today. I'm going to launch a quick 3-question poll on the presentation we just watched. Please take a minute to share your feedback with us. Additionally,
I see a comment in the chat too. I don't know if you wanted to address that one or not. No, we're finished.
Let's see. Let me take one moment.
I see what she's saying there. Yeah, I have had students try to slide it out of the video too.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so what we'll do now is we're going to go ahead, and I've posted the remaining links for our concurrent sessions for today's webinars. Additionally, for the last hour of the day, we'll be doing something a little different. If you're in the need for a little relaxation and could use a stretch, join us for our happy hour yoga. If you prefer to stretch your mind, test your knowledge with virtual teams trivia, or if you'd like to keep the conversation going with your colleagues, join one of our 2 roundtable discussions where you can talk through today's sessions and network with fellow attendees. These events will begin at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can view the chat for event meeting room links or access the conference website for a complete list of tomorrow's concurrent events. If you'd like to get an early start tomorrow, join us for a stretch during our 9 a.m. chair yoga session. IES continues tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern with a keynote from Mary Ellen Dance on better understanding and managing stress. We will also be hearing from our keynote speaker, Nelson Laver, who will share his encouraging story of overcoming illiteracy caused by undiagnosed dyslexia. While accessing the conference website, don't forget to swing by the exhibit hall to say hello to the Hawks team. View a quick 5-minute demonstration and be entered to win the hourly giveaway, your choice of a smart pen, standing desk, or $100 Amazon gift card. We'll see you at our next session.